Welcome to another religious education lesson. We will continue on the topic rites of passage. Now, in previous lessons, we looked at rites of passage associated with a birth, coming of age, and marriage. Now, we will look at death rites of passage in four major religions. Death fascinates us, but it tends to frighten us as well. It is probably the last great taboo subject, sometimes that people prefer not to talk about, particularly those in the Western world. In Orthodox Christian services, the coffin is left open until the last moment before burial so that friends and relations can pay their last respects or say goodbye. At most Jamaican Christian funeral services, the coffin is left open for viewing before the service begins for the same reason. The coffin lid is closed before the service begins. In Judaism, members of the Jewish community make sure that the dead body is not left on its own between the moment of death and the time of burial, which usually follows a few hours afterwards. In Islam, the body is covered with a simple linen cloth and placed in the grave so that it touches the earth. Hindus in India bury the body in an open air as a part of the journey of the spirit to the next life. The ashes are scattered on the river Ganges or another river if the Ganges is too far away. The family may keep some of the ashes in an earthen pot. We have 10 objectives for this lesson. Please take some time to read through them carefully. If the video is moving too fast, feel free to pause and read through. Please take some time to read through the definitions for the key terms from the next few slides. Remember, you are free to pause the video and make notes of these key terms. Let us continue. Funerals and beliefs. Funeral reflects the belief that people hold about life after death. This is a basic belief held by Christians, Jews, and Muslims. At some time after death, the soul must face the judgment of God. This teaching is particularly strong in Christianity and Islam. Christians look forward to the second coming of Christ, when Jesus will return to earth to be the judge of all human beings. Islam teaches that initially all people are judged soon after they are placed in the grave, but that there is a future judgment when all people will stand before Allah, that great judge. Then those destined for heaven are separated from who are sent to hell. 2. Religions which teaches that the body dies and disintegrates, but the spirit or soul returns to live in another body. This belief is called reincarnation. This is a teaching with some difference of details of both Buddhism and Hinduism. Both of these religions insist that many rebirths are necessary before the soul can enter into the state of bliss in the state which Buddhists call nirvana and Hindus call moksha. The funeral ceremonies in these groups are designed to assist the soul in taking up residence in another body. Buddhism teaches that death is inevitable and that life is impermanent and passing. Christian funeral. Christians believe in life after death. Most believe that if you have accepted Jesus as God's Son and try to follow His teaching in your life, when you die, you will go to heaven. Some believe that those who have done wrong will go to hell, a place of separation from God. Some believe that if you repent and ask for forgiveness for whatever wrongs you have done, God will forgive and you will go to heaven. It is important to note that Christians' view about life after death differs widely. For example, some believe that just the soul lives on, others believe that the body and soul do. However, all Christians believe about death have one thing in common: death is not the end. Catholic also has a vary in belief. Catholics, however, believe that there is a place of cleansing called purgatory, where the soul of the dead are prepared for heaven. What happens at a Christian funeral? In most countries, it is a legal requirement that when someone dies, there has to be a funeral. A funeral is a ceremony that remembers a person who has died and which marks the burial or cremation of his or her body. Often, the funeral service will take place in the church that the person attended. Christian funerals sometimes take place in a church with a burial or cremation with a cremation afterwards. Now, cremation is the burning of the body. Or the whole service can happen in a cremation if the person is to be cremated. There may be readings, hymns, prayers, and usually the minister talks about the person who had died. This program usually takes in tributes from persons, remembrance, and a eulogy. Members of the family or friends may take part and read a Bible passage or perhaps a favorite poem. Oftentimes, Psalm 23 is read out. In Catholic churches, funeral services may be a little bit different. In Catholic churches, the service is called Requiem Mass, in which a special celebration of Holy Communion takes place. Holy Communion, some persons may know it as Lord's Supper or Last Supper or Holy Eucharist. Traditionally, in Caribbean, a Christian funeral is preceded by a 9 nights, in other words, a wake, which is held in the home of the deceased person. This ritual involves singing of hymns, which are tracked with someone reading the lines aloud before they are sung by mourners. The purpose of 9 nights is to bring comfort to the bereaved. Christian and life after death. Now, Christians believe that there is life after death, and this life after death is often determined by how you lived your life before death. So Christians believe that death and resurrection of Jesus means that they too will share eternal life with Jesus. Jesus told his followers that he was going to prepare a place for them in heaven, a place where there will be no more tears, sadness, sickness, or pain. Most Christians believe that you cannot earn your way into heaven by being good, but by only accepting God's salvation through Jesus. Christians also believe that after judgment, people who have not accepted God into their lives will be banished from God's presence forever. This is hell. However, those people who have accepted God's salvation through believing in Jesus will spend eternity in heaven, the place where God is.
At a Christian funeral, everybody will gather before the funeral party arrive. Then when the funeral party arrive, they will come into the church in procession with the coffin containing the person brought into the church. Everybody will stand as a sign of respect. We'll have some prayers which will acknowledge the feelings that we have and the feelings that we're bringing to God. We'll often sing hymns which express faith and help people to understand more about what we're doing, about what is happening. An important part of the service, as well as the prayers and the hymns and the readings, is a chance to think about the person and their life. People can tell stories. We'll talk about the good things and particularly the happy things, the good memories, the things that people have valued. And we'll usually have a reading from the Bible which talks about the hope and the faith that we have, so that we can understand more about what God says about death and life. And then people can give thanks to God for the person who's died, and then we'll ask for help, we'll ask for God's peace, and as the coffin leaves, we'll say goodbye. I think the thing that makes a Christian funeral different is the element of faith. As Christians, we believe that death is not the end of life. Jesus said, "I'm the resurrection and the life." And through trust in me, people can come to God. So our life continues. That's what we believe as Christians. Now, that transforms the way that we approach a funeral, because we will pray. We will bring our thoughts and feelings to God. We're not just dealing with people's emotions and trying to move them to a better place in the way that they're feeling. We're able to offer people hope, to offer them words from the Bible which talk about life and death and God's love and faithfulness. And we're able to bring all of our thoughts and feelings to the God who cares for us as well as for the person who's died. So it gives a very different perspective, I feel, to the way that we approach a funeral.
Jewish funeral. Now the Jews have always stressed the importance of living by God's law in this life, rather than trying to work out what happens in the next. If religious Jews fall seriously ill and fear that death may be close, a special prayer is said in which they confirm their belief in the one God who has always cared for them. They plead for help from God to recover from their illness. They confess their sins and show a willingness to make good everything that they have done wrong. Now, when a Jewish man or woman dies, it is important that the burial takes place as soon as possible. The burial does not take place on the Sabbath day. Some funerals even take place the same day, although this is not possible in some countries. Most Jews are buried, but some Reformed Jews may choose to be cremated. When friends and family hear about the death, a mourning ritual called Kiria is performed. People used to tear a piece of their clothing, but now some choose to wear a black ribbon. This is a sign of grief that originates from the Torah. What happens after someone dies in Judaism? Between the death and burial, people stay with the body. It is treated with the utmost respect. Many Jewish communities have a team of volunteers, the Shevra Kadisha, who help to prepare a body for burial. The body is washed and wrapped in shroud, or sometimes in loosely stitched clothing. Now, if you should attend a Jewish funeral, you are going to see a quiet and short ceremony. The service is likely to include psalms, reading from the holy books, and a eulogy, a speech about the person who has died. Jewish funerals do not have lots of flowers because Jews believe that flowers represent life, so they would not take it to a funeral, although there may be some. And the coffin or casket is always closed, and the open one is thought to be disrespectful. Also, you would find that Jewish coffins are usually plain and not made from expensive wood, as Jewish people do not believe in spending a lot of money on the dead. They use a spade to scatter some earth on the coffin before the service ends with the words, "The Lord has given and the Lord has taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord."
The word for funeral in Judaism is levaya, which means accompanying. To accompany a person to their final resting place is an act of love and kindness for both the deceased and their family. The funeral may start at a funeral home, a synagogue or graveside, and there are a few practices worth noting. Men, even non-Jews, are often expected to cover their heads. Don't expect an open casket, as it's traditionally considered disrespectful in Jewish practice. Note there probably won't be any flowers, as they represent life, and this is a time about death. Depending on the community, it's unlikely you'll talk to the immediate family of mourners until after the funeral. The funeral involves prayers, psalms, and a eulogy. After the service, the pallbearers are generally called to the front. Everyone rises as the casket is carried out. Immediate mourners walk behind the casket, and everyone else follows. At the cemetery, the pallbearers carry the casket from the hearse to the grave, where it's then lowered, and you say a few more prayers. Then each person shovels or throws a handful of dirt onto the grave. Some do this 3 times. Don't hand the shovel to the next person, just stick it back into the dirt, as this powerful and important mitzvah is an individual obligation. At the conclusion, you'll form 2 parallel lines the mourners pass through, a symbol of the community joining together to show support. While they walk through the line, one thing people say is Hamakom inachem etchem, or simply, may God comfort you. When leaving the cemetery, it's customary to wash your hands without drying them, a symbol that you're leaving a place of death and re-entering the world of the living. Now begins the Shiva period, with many powerful rituals to learn about. Learn about the customs of Shiva and how to make a Shiva call in the next part of this series.
Muslim funeral. When a Muslim dies, he or she is often surrounded by a family or a family very close by. The person dying tries to say the Shahada as their last words. If this is not possible, somebody else say it so that Allah knows that the person's intention was to say these words. Muslims believe that this act of faith will help them get to paradise once they die. The Shahada is the Muslim's profession of faith. This states that there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. Muslim funerals. Muslim funerals take place as soon as possible. Ideally, a burial is not more than 3 days after a person has died, but this is not always possible, especially in non-Muslim countries. The body is washed and wrapped in a white cloth called ihram. If a Muslim man has been on a Hajj, this may be the ihram that he has worn on the pilgrimage. Now, the Hajj is the mandatory pilgrimage that a Muslim must take to the holy city of Mecca at least once in their life. On this Hajj, they will wear a cloth or clothing which represents purity, and this is what they call ihram. This is the same clothing that they are referring to. In some Muslim countries, the body is buried just wrapped in an ihram. However, in many non-Muslim countries, this is not legal, so a coffin is also used. The body is always buried facing the direction of Mecca. A imam and the deceased person's family and friends perform the salat, the prayer with special movements, over the person who had died. The imam is known as the leader, which is equivalent to like a pastor in Christianity. Muslims and life after death. The Muslim funeral service must reflect Muslims' belief about life after death. Muslims believe that the soul of the body in the grave awaits the day of judgment, when the bodies of those who have died will be brought back to life. Allah alone decides when the day will be. It may be thousands of years into the future. For the souls of those who have already died, however, it will pass in no time. The short time that a person spends on earth is a test, as it is eternity that really matters. If they have continued in their evil ways during this life, refusing to seek Allah's forgiveness, then they have lost their chance to reach heaven. No forgiveness is possible after death. The day of judgment is followed by life after death, which is called Akira. There are only two possible destinations for those who have died. Either they go to paradise, which is the destination of those who have sought and found Allah's forgiveness. The Quran describes paradise as a garden of happiness. It is a place of great delight and joy. On the other hand, the persons who have disobeyed Allah, their destination is hell. They have lived their life in evil standards and not what was laid down by Allah in the Quran. Hell is a place of everlasting burning and torment.
A deceased person should be buried as soon as possible, according to Sharia. Local mosques and Islamic community organizations may be contacted to assist in making funeral arrangements. Burial often happens within 24 hours. Before burial, someone who is of Islamic faith washes the body an odd number of times, usually 3. The deceased's hair should be clean, and a woman's hair is tied into 3 braids and tucked behind her back. In Muslim cemeteries, graves face the holy city of Mecca. The deceased's body is placed on their right side, facing the Kaaba, the house of God in Mecca. Practicing Muslims have different mourning rituals depending on where they live. This video is part of a special series at The Walrus called The End: How We Die Now. Learn more at thewalrus.ca/death.
Hindu funeral. A person's funeral is the 16th and last samskara. According to Hindu tradition, the body should be buried within hours of the person's dying. The ceremony is usually performed by a Brahmin priest, sometimes along an oldest son. However, Hindus believe that reincarnation, that is, the soul of someone who has died, is reborn into another body. This cycle is called samsara. Because of this belief, Hindus believe the dead body is not needed anymore, so it is cremated. Cremation is usually because a Hindu believes that fire purifies the soul. What happens at a Hindu funeral? It is the responsibility of the oldest son in a Hindu family to make sure that the death rites are correctly carried out. Hindu parents hope to have a son so that he will be able to do this for them. The eldest son leads the funeral procession to the burial place. He then lights the funeral pyre. This is important because the ghost of the dead person could return to haunt the family if the procedures are not carried out properly. As the fire reaches the body on the funeral pyre, the son pours ghee onto the flame. The youngest son leads the procession back home again. Then 3 days later, the eldest son returns to gather up the ashes. Ceremonies to help the soul to find a new home are carried out on the 10th, 11th, and 13th day. Hindus and life after death. Hindus believe that the human soul is always seeking to be reunited with Brahman, the supreme spirit. This will, however, take many reincarnations. To hasten this time, Hindus try to live a life of unselfish service to others, follow a life of devotion to the family of gods, or spend a lifetime studying the holy books and leading a holy life. Whichever way is chosen, thousands of rebirths will always be needed. On this spiritual journey, a person carries forward the consequences of their action from one life to the next. This law governs all life and is known as karma. Hindus believe that karma follows an individual into the next life, which means whether if their deeds are good or bad in this present life, this is what will follow them into the next life.
Hindu death rituals. There is one thing that is certain in this life. Eventually, we must all die. This story takes place at the Ramghat cremation grounds outside Kathmandu, Nepal. Cremations in Nepal are treated quite casually, and spectators are always present. As many as 7 cremations take place here at any given time. Cremation is a ritual designed to release the soul from its earthly existence. It is believed that the soul, or astral body, will linger as long as the physical body remains. If the body is not cremated, the soul remains nearby for days, months, or even years. The pyre is built by a skilled professional dong, an untouchable caste who tend funeral pyres. The only bodies not cremated are unnamed babies and the lowliest of castes. When ready, the relatives place the body carefully on the pyre. The sons circle the pyre and say farewell. Then the chief mourner, usually the eldest son, takes the flaming holy kasha from the dong and circles the pyre one last time. He sets the pyre alight by touching the flame to the mouth. Dom then arranges the final elements to ensure a sustained burn. Once burning steadily, the mourners walk away without looking back. The dead is now an offering to Agni, the fire, and will be conveyed to heaven in the flames. After the cremation, the ashes are thrown into the Bagmati River and eventually carried downstream to the holy Ganges and salvation.
Now we are at this point of the lesson where we test if we have learned. Please read through the questions carefully from the next 2 slides and answer them as best as possible. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, if you have questions, please place them in the comment section. Bye!